That was the best episode of Danganronpa we have had so far. And I mean either of the series. Oh my god. The hype was real in this one. That is what I had to say. Because my god. Everything came into this. I mean seriously, they said that this was like a thank you to the fans for playing the game so far and reading the novels and stuff. But my god, I didn't expect them to bring all of this in. For one thing, Kodaka, you lying bastard, literally said we weren't going to see anything from Jabberwock Island or any of the Remnants of Despair in the Future Foundation side. We were lied to. Right at the end there, Izuru Kamakura, possibly Hajime Hinata, more likely Izuru Kamakura, revealing himself. And that was the point where I blew the hell up. I mean, going back to the other stuff, Munakata acting so funny in this episode, seemingly partly behind everything that's going on at the Future Foundation. Not completely, I don't think. I still don't think she's the mastermind. But goddamn, Byakuya Togami really does. He really believes it's Munakata. And oh man, just those hints of everything that's going on. He thinks Munakata is at Toa City still hiding somewhere. And then we got a glimpse of our Ultra Despair girls, Komaru Naegi and Toko Fukawa, acting surprisingly chummy. I mean, I guess they were kind of friendly by the end, but man, they were acting like super girly and shit. And we even got a panty shot from Komaru, which I found a bit odd. I mean, she's literally the only girl in this series now who's underage, but still, they use her. Anyway, I'm glad, like, it made the fans happy, I'm sure, so that doesn't really matter too much. But Izuru, man. Izuru Kamakura. That is the part of the episode that blew my fucking mind. I mean, at the end of Danganronpa 2, it seemed like Izuru Kamakura was gone for good. We had that moment where Izuru came out of the program, and yes, he cut his hair to look like Hajime. He was doing all these lines that sounded like Hajime. He was talking about the future that he believed in. And it sounded like he was hope-filled while he was going through this monologue. It sounded like Hajime had won. And that Hajime was still in control of his own body. But in this episode, when we saw Hajime, I mean, they made it a big, slow reveal. He had his eyes closed the whole time when we first saw him, staring down at a battalion of Future Foundation peacekeepers. And then he just opens his eyes. And you see, for one thing, it's not the full crosshairs that he has in the video game world that Hajime Hinata had. Instead, he's just got the left and the right bottom. The same way freaking Izuru Kamakura had in the most recent episode of Zetsubo Side. And then we hear him say that line completely devoid of emotion. How boring. As if he'd planned for all of this. As if this was exactly what he'd seen in his foresight. And was just basically saying, oh, I still haven't lost. The same kind of thing that Junko did when her plans continuously went correct. So, you know, it sounds like Izuru Kamakura wasn't cured. It didn't sound like Hajime Hinata. It sounded like that's Izuru still in control. And that he really did plan that whole thing. And he was just pretending that he turned back to Hajime Hinata at the end by cutting his hair and, you know, pretending he was hope-filled. Getting Makoto Naegi and Kyoko Kirigiri and Byakuya Togami to all kind of accept the fact that he was fine. He wasn't a remnant of despair anymore. And they left the island. They left him there. And now it looks like Izuru's been in control the whole time. That would blow my mind. Like, that's the thing. This episode destroyed any theories that I was crafting in my head. But I'm just so happy. Because I love the Remnants of Despair. I love Izuru Kamakura. I love the idea of him being the big, bad, final mastermind. Oh, man. So, yeah. Incredible moments. Now I'm going to calm down. And start to talk about what actually happened in the episode rather than just fanboying and oh my god. But you know, if you want to hear more fanboying, you can check out my live reaction. I'll leave a link in the description. But other than that, okay, this episode was great for a bunch of reasons. For one thing, everything that went down with Izuyoi and Seko and Ruruka, like it seemed to come to a big head in this episode. We found Izuyoi's dead body before we even saw Seiko's dead body, which was shocking. And more shocking, rather than having actually been killed, it was almost set up exactly like one of the sacrifices. Like they had killed Izuyoi while he was asleep. He was stabbed through the chest with the dagger, But unlike normal, he wasn't properly hung up in the air. His feet were actually on the ground. His lower body was on the ground. And this is what I'm thinking happened. Because when we have Kyoko Kirigiri going down and investigating the body, you see her touch something on him, lift up her hand, and her fingers are covered in white dust. I think that was sugar. I think that Ruruka force-fed him one of her candies, and that he died from his NG code. One other thing that really suggests this is when it zooms in on his face when he's dead, there's a little tiny bit of blood underneath one of his eyes. So it looks like he's had that whole reaction that everybody else does when their NG code goes off and they bleed out of the one eye. But then Ruruka has seen this happen, realized that she accidentally killed him, and then wiped off his face and tried to make it look like one of the sacrifices. We also see that when we see Seiko in this episode, she doesn't have the knife stabbed through her chest. So Ruruka probably went back to Seiko, ripped the dagger out of Seiko, and stabbed it into Izuyoi to try and pretend that that's what actually happened. That he was sacrificed while everyone was asleep. And then when everybody came by and found the body, she did that whole damsel in distress bullshit act of like, oh my god, am I safe? You guys aren't the killer, right? And then like really going after Ryota. Like she really went in there. She was like, you're going to save me, right? You're not going to let anyone hurt me. You'll protect me, right? You guys are safe. Like really acting like a little bitch and really appealing to Ryota's need to save people. For one thing, his NG code might be he has to protect women. But for another thing, just the fact that he lost the ultimate imposter and the fact that he wants to be a beacon of hope like Makoto Naegi. Like, yeah, Ruruka would know to go after him. She's that type of woman who uses men. Oh, that's the thing. I was starting to look more kindly on Ruruka after the last episode. I was thinking, I kind of understand where she's coming from with the way she treated Seiko. I saw how the lack of communication broke down their friendship. But no. The fact that she has accidentally, most likely, killed Izuyoi, but then tried to cover it all up, that's horrible. And the way that she's just trying to move on to Ryota and start using him, and probably going to be thinking of him as her new bodyguard like Izuyoi always was. That is evil. I fucking hate her. And there was even that line where she was like, oh, it makes me sad to look at him. Can't we just leave? And she was really disappointed when Kirigiri said no, she was looking for more clues. So yeah, that's part of my predictions from last week that came true, but most of them were just completely smashed. Ruruka is more of a bitch than I thought she was. Oh, man. And when it comes to that room that Izuyoi found, did he tell Ruruka about it? Is Ruruka in on this evil plan, or what's going on with that? We don't even see the gun that he had, so Ruruka probably has that gun hidden somewhere on her body and is able to use it whenever she wants to, which is even more terrifying because clearly she's already gotten to that despair stage where she's pure survival instincts at this point, using anything she can to survive. Anyway, the other thing that happened was Kizukura and Kyoko going about doing their investigations, and Kizukura is just looking more and more shady as time goes on. I mean, in this episode, he was continuously messing with Kyoko Kirigiri, saying things to her like, oh, don't you know when there's a detective around, that's normally when death happens, and a friend of mine said that because detectives are around, that's how murder happens, and shit like that. Just prodding her, kind of teasing her, and, you know, kind of flirting with her. People were saying, oh, he's flirting with her, but I think it's more he's messing with her than anything else. Definitely shady as all hell. I mean, it still fits with my original theory that Chisa, Kizukura, and Tengen set this whole thing up. But, oh man, now that we've got that, Kizukura does seem evil. And a lot of people have been suggesting the theory that Kyoko Kirigiri has Junko's AI built into her brain now, into her subconscious from when she was in and under the Neo World program. And if Izuru really is still Izuru, and his plan did succeed, then maybe that was the plan. Maybe he put Junko into Kyoko's body to really fuck with Makoto Naegi. That would be so perfect, so evil. And there are a lot of hints to that. We've got Kyoko walking around writing in a notebook, just like Junko was in the last episode. We had Kyoko narrating the first episode, just like Junko narrated her first arrival. We have Junko wearing that little leg strap thing in the newest episode of Despair Side, and in this episode we've got Kyoko wearing a very similar thing. Well, she's been wearing a similar thing since she joined the Future Foundation. But there are a lot of hints towards that. And there are people that think that Kizakura is possibly the Despair twins' father, because he has the same eye color, and, you know, somehow the ultimate soldier managed to get recruited into Hope's Peak Academy, even though she wasn't recruited by Kizakura. It could be just Junko's sway with the school, the same way she was able to handle a bunch of things when it came to her becoming Ryoko Otonashi. But it could be that Kizakura knows who the girls are and was just, you know, convincible to the fact that, hey, I'll bring my 2 daughters into the school. I don't care that they're evil as fuck. I mean, who knows? Maybe he gets full of despair during all the shit that's going down with Chisa and his class. I don't know. This is the thing. This is so crazy at this point. Everything's going insane. I mean, the other thing that happened in the building, which was absolutely insane as well, was Munakata's actions. I mean, we saw why he no longer has his original sword with him. We saw at the end of the last episode he'd picked up the sword from that room with the Monokuma door. We saw that he'd picked up that sword and it was next to him. And in this one, we actually saw him use his old sword and stab it straight into Chisa. And then just say, bye, Chisa. As if it wasn't a big thing. That was so fucked up. And it linked to my old theory so well. I was really convinced while I was watching the beginning of this episode that, you know, Chisa wasn't supposed to be dead, that when people get stabbed with those knives, it just emits a toxin that slows down their heart rate and just keeps them in a comatose kind of state, keeping their brain alive while basically switching off most of their circulatory system. And that he had heard that from Tengen, or at least had heard something like that. Like Tengen had said, Chisa Yukizome-kun, rather than the attacker changes, and so he was going back and just making sure she would stay dead by stabbing her with that sword. Absolutely insane at this point. I mean, Munakata's so fucked up. Oh, my brain. But yeah, so, I mean, that would mean if Chisa and Tengen and Kizakura did set up this game, which was my theory, but is slowly slipping away from me, then even if they did, Tengen's already been killed, like, properly, had his throat slit by the sword, and now Chisa has also, instead of the knife, also got a sword through her chest. So that if she was supposed to wake up at some point, she's now going to be dead. And maybe that's why Juzo Sakakura is going to start a fight with Munakata. Maybe he's going to come across Chisa's body and find Munakata's sword through her, figure out what went down, and realize that Chisa was supposed to come back, and that's why he's going to end up punching Munakata and setting off his NG code. Either way, absolute insanity, and I'm loving it. I am loving Munakata going insane. It's like they're creating an ultimate despair out of his ultimate hope. Which brings us to Monokatoa, who was actually really funny in this episode. Pickle Satan was on point. I mean, there was that moment, the real comedy moment that I really liked, where she was trying to cheer people up, and Asahina said to her, "Oh wow, you're a real warrior of hope," and she freaked out. She was like, "Oh god, they've caught me." That was a brilliant little shout out to Ultra Despair Girls before the Ultra Despair Girls actually came in. And oh man, the other bitch, she was just so good. It feels like she's been infected by Komaeda's thinking a little more now, because she's constantly trying to cheer Naegi up and get him to continue the game as the ultimate hope. I'm wondering if where Komaeda thinks that he wants to create ultimate despair for an ultimate hope to defeat it, he's possibly taught Monica the opposite of that theory and decided that she needs to create an ultimately strong hope to actually let it fall into ultimate despair. And that possibly this whole thing is to lead Makoto Naegi into despair and turn him into the ultimate despair from the ultimate hope. That would explain why she's playing along with this whole killing game as Miaya Gecko Gahara rather than just using all her powerful weapons to do whatever she wants. She wants Makoto Naegi to feel that hope and to keep fighting against the hope, fighting against the despair, but then ultimately fall into it. Oh man, so that was great. She was actually very comical in this episode. I liked it. We had the little Monokuma maid behind her, which was, you know, just a robot, unfortunately. But it was a cool little shout out to Danganronpa Zero at that moment as well. Oh, and one other thing we found out about Munakata Kyosuke was that he'd sent the Peacekeeper fleet to Jabberwock Island before the game even began. So, no matter how the outcome came out with Makoto Naegi, he planned to destroy Jabberwock Island and all the remnants of despair. And we heard a little bit of how much his ego has swelled in this episode too. I mean, even back when they were finishing high school, when we had Chisa, Junko, and Munakata finishing high school, he was talking about how he'd create the overseas department for Hope's Peak so that he could take over Hope's Peak and lead it. Made it sound like he really is a dictator kind of thing. But I mean, it sounded like his plan was to take over Hope's Peak, and that's possibly the plan that he mentioned to Tengen in the last episode, where he said, "You know nothing of me, you know nothing of my plan." That maybe his plan this whole time has just been to take over Hope's Peak, and he sees Future Foundation now as Hope's Peak, so he wants to be 100% in control. It wants it to be a dictatorship rather than, you know, a leader thing where they have the different division heads. He just wants to be the one in control. He wants everyone to listen to his ultimate hope. Which, you know, adds spice to the theory that he's possibly in on the killing game and started it, but I don't know. I still like the idea that the original three, Chisa, Kizakura, and Tengen started it. It's becoming less likely as time goes on, by far. And I mean, it was things that Byakuya Togami said that really tied everything together and made it the worldwide experience that it is now. I mean, he mentioned Monokatoa, he mentioned her being in Toa City. He mentioned the fact that the Ultra Despair girls are there, called them up, got them in on the case. So we've got them going after Monokatoa, finishing off their story. We've got Hajime on Jabberwock Island, finishing off his story, probably as Izuru rather than Hajime. And we've got Byakuya Togami, who knows more than he's telling to Naegi. He knows that Miyaya Gekogahara was a real girl, is dead. They found her body, so he knows there's that fake version of her inside the game, and he's going over there to try and save everyone. Which means he's got to run into Hagakure, which is going to be interesting. And then he's got to break into the Future Foundation and see what he finds. And basically, I think he's going to find an empty building. I mean, if you haven't heard this theory already, the theory that I've got going in my head now, and a lot of other people have thought up as well, is that underneath the Future Foundation building, there's another Future Foundation building that goes under the water. And that would explain why when Seiko was slammed against the wall, there's water pouring over her. It could just be a burst pipe, that's 100% logical. But the fact that they show that water pouring over her continuously is a bit of a giveaway. And the fact that it links to all of the old hints that led to the simulation theory, with the door suddenly being repaired rather than having the knife in it, and other things being changed around so quickly. If they'd already done all of this to the underwater, I should say, Future Foundation building, and then when everyone was asleep, all they had to do was move them down to the second building, that would make sense. So yeah, oh man. This episode was absolutely amazing. We got so many more hints. Oh man, we even got like Tengen's death message, which I really expected to be 11037. I thought it was going to be just a little Easter egg thing where he'd paid attention to Makoto Naegi's killing game and was just sending him a message not to give up hope. But he literally said, "I entrust the hope of the world to you." And you know, going by my theory, I still don't think that was a message to Naegi, even though Asahina and Gekogahara went along with that. I think that was supposed to be a message to Chisa, and that knowing that he was dying, he wrote that message to her to let her know, continue the program, finish it off. I mean, who knows? If he really was in the last episode talking about the Izuru Kamakura project, and he really does know Izuru Kamakura is still out there, maybe that's it. Maybe Izuru Kamakura planned this from way back when he was in Hope's Peak Academy, and that's Tengen just letting him know, like, yeah, you did good. You planned out all of this. We finished your mission. Oh, God. I honestly don't believe that. Don't worry. That's just a joke. It's just, man. Yeah, this episode was amazing. It's thrown so many of my theories into the trash, but it's given us such a much bigger experience. So, I mean, I still want to make a theory video on Wednesday, just not a theory for everything that's going on. I'll probably focus on something smaller. Oh, man. So, yeah, just let me know what you guys thought of this episode in the comment section below. Let me know if you guys have any theories of your own about what's going on. What you think about the idea of Ruruka accidentally killing Izuyoi and trying to hide it. What you think about what the fuck Munakata is doing. I mean, we've even seen that he's now got the Chusen as well. He took the Chusen off the Tenzen's body. So he not only has the sword and the drugs that turn him superhuman, he also has that Chusen which fires a bunch of needles at people. Munakata has just become ultimately deadly. And in this episode, we didn't even see Juzo Sakakura. So who knows what he's up to at this point. Oh, one final thing, and since I know people were going to ask me about that dream Makoto Naegi had with Kyoko Kirigiri being evil and missing an eye and shit, and Munakata threatening him like it was his fault, yeah, that was amazing. It completely mind-fucked me. I believed it for about 2 to 3 seconds, pretty much until I saw Munakata looking normal and not with the missing eye himself. So yeah, it was cool. It was just a little mind-fucky thing to let us know he's starting to fall into despair. This is starting to wear Makoto Naegi's hope down. So this is working. So yeah, that was cool. Just let me know your thoughts, because episode blew my mind. Best episode so far. And it's put it to the point where I can honestly say, this is my best anime of the season. Like, it's so twisty. I can't see them messing it up so badly that this would fall below anything else now. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. And if you like this review, wreck that like button like you mean it. Subscribe if you haven't already to see more. And I will see you guys next time.